welcome back to a new video. I'm gonna continue where I left off previously. Traumatic events that I was exposed to as a child that have affected me. In my last video, I talked about how we escaped the domestic violence situation that my mother and dad were in. So now we are bouncing around from place to place. So we ended up going to a battered women's shelter. That experience, it is a whirlwind of emotions and uncertainty and changes that I never really have talked about extensively or in detail, and I'm not sure that I will in this video because it was so much. We went to, I don't know, I keep saying it was like 13 places, but it was probably less than that. It just felt like it was that many. We went to at least 4 distinctive battered women's shelters that I can remember. The most difficult thing about the shelters were that we had to follow their rules. So it was kind of like you were in a group home or like a halfway house. If you guys are familiar with how some prisons work, when you get close to the end of your time, depending on what level of security the jail is, they will allow you to be part of a halfway house program where you can partially leave the facility during the day, and then you have to come back at a certain point of your day to check in and make sure that you're doing everything you're supposed to do and take drug tests and all of that stuff. So this was the type of environment I feel like we were in at these shelters. Some of them were like apartment buildings, some of them were just a regular house that had multiple rooms in them, and a lot of times we had to share space with strangers because there wasn't enough room for you to have your own individual room. So there were like multiple cots in the same rooms, or in some places we had a room but it was the 3 of us all together, myself, my little sister, and my mom, so we had to share the room together. So this is still my 3rd grade year. In total, I ended up going to 5 different schools my 3rd grade year. It wasn't that great of an experience, and all this time I'm missing my dad. Really want to see my dad. I want to talk to him on the phone. There were no more visitations at this point. I think we only went to 1 or 2 supervised visits. It's the very last shelter that we ended up being in. It was located in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I was going to a school there. What was the name of that school? My version of what happened differs a little bit from my mom's version of what happened. There was this woman there, a Hispanic lady, and she was really obnoxious. She was really loud and obnoxious and just ghetto as hell, a busybody. There was a living room with a TV in that place that my sister and I and some of the other children that were there were only a few, kind of just loitered in all day. I think my mom was going through depression at this time because I remember her being constantly sad. Her demeanor was very down, and my mom is normally a very chipper person. So even if she's only putting on an act, she comes off like she's really happy-go-lucky, outgoing, and talkative. So it was a different atmosphere being in the room with my mom because she didn't seem that way emotionally. And something about that I think I picked up on as a child, and it made me very uneasy and anxious. I stated in my introduction video that I am diagnosed with anxiety disorder. But even as far back as I can remember, I think I've always had it. Just because of, like I said, the surroundings that I was growing up in was a very nerve-wracking environment. I recall having a lot of nervous habits that my mother would scold me for, biting my nails, tossing and turning all night long. I had really bad insomnia. I never went to sleep at night. I was just up thinking all the time, and I still do this. And just different things that I was doing that were indicative of a nervous disorder. Who's thinking about that in the moment? Mental health and disorders were not that well known about. People didn't really, it wasn't a common thing for people to talk about or even know about. If you had any kind of mental disorder diagnosis, you were just labeled crazy. Because I have Asperger's, and people think that if you have autism or Asperger's, you cannot process emotions or read other people's emotions. You can. It depends on you as the person to varying degrees, but my thing was I could figure out the emotion, but I couldn't always figure out why they felt that way. And that was the thing that I was always challenging myself to figure out about people. I can see you're upset, but I don't know why you are. I don't know what's the appropriate thing to say to make you feel better. So I wouldn't know how to react when I would see people distressed. I think because we were in this environment of anxiety and uncertainty, my sister and I bickered every single day. I remember even back when we were in Korea, this was actually another side effect that I wanted to talk about of children witnessing domestic violence. Like, my mom will fight you. She does not care. As a little Asian lady, she has no fear in her heart. When she thinks she's right about something, to the death, she doesn't care who it is. Like, my mom was telling my grandmom off on her deathbed. I'm not that kind of person where I'm like really confrontational, but when it came to my sister and the things that she was doing that would provoke me, I always felt compelled to correct her or let her know that she was bothering me. Me and my sister would fight constantly. Like, when we were in Korea, every day we were fighting after school. I mean, fighting, like beating each other up, fist fighting. I hated it in my heart. Like, I hated fighting her. She'd always hit me first, and I would just end up beating her up because I'm the older sister, and that's, you just have to. But I would feel bad while it was happening. I'd be like, just stop. If you stop, then I'll stop. Calm down. Just go in a corner. Separate yourself from me. Leave me alone. Don't touch me. Leave me alone. She could not help herself. She just always wanted to do something violent to me, and then we would end up fighting. Imagine how distressful this is at a battered woman's shelter full of other women who have been abused physically by their partners, and these two little girls are constantly fighting, beating each other up. And I think we were probably a little worse than usual just because we were so, like, we had no outlet, and we were so full of, like, anger, and we were afraid. We were probably worse than we normally are. And my mother, it was starting to, like, really, like, fuck with her that me and my sister were just constantly fighting each other. On this particular day, I'm in the living room watching something on TV. The Hispanic lady, I think she was Puerto Rican. Like, everybody was Puerto Rican in that neighborhood. I don't know who said what first, but I recall that she had said something to me that was really, like, mean. Like, she said something really condescending, some type of diss. Like, she dissed me in some way. And at this point, I'm only 8 years old. I was pissed. Like, I don't know what she said. I wish I could remember, but I have no clue what she said now. I was really angry, and I was, like, yelling at her to, like, take it back or say she was sorry, or, like, arguing with her about it. I think she laughed at me. I went into the kitchen. I pulled out a butter knife, and I was just holding it like this, like, just shaking in the kitchen. But first of all, it's a butter knife, so I don't know exactly what kind of damage that would have done. I was so enraged. Like, I felt like I had to take it out somehow, and the only way I could think to do that was to distract my anger with something else that would take my mind off of the fact that this grown woman is arguing with me and I can't do anything about it. I was, like, huffing and puffing and just, like, tears streaming down my face. I was so pissed, and I probably looked like I was gonna cut myself, but I wasn't going to cut myself. It was just my way of expressing my anger. I was so mad. I didn't know what to do. I think the girl, she followed me out of the room, and she just started, like, yelling, like, for, I guess, for, like, the counselors to come, because the counselors stayed in the office that was downstairs. They came rushing up the stairs. They grabbed the knife out of my hand. Then they made this big deal about me doing that, and actually, like, tossed me into a mental institution. And I remember being there for, I don't even know how long. I remember somebody, like, when I first went there, I feel like both me and my sister were there together initially, but then my sister got to leave. I remember when I first went there, there was a doctor who was, like, evaluating me, and he kept asking me all these questions, giving me, like, a Rorschach test. And at that time, I'm 8 years old, you guys. Like, this is how smart I was. I knew that he was psychologically evaluating me, and based on the things I said, he would have some notion of, like, what my mental state was. And I felt invaded. Like, I felt like, how dare you? You know, how dare you not believe me when I said I wasn't going to cut myself? I think they thought I was suicidal. So at 8 years old, I'm answering this guy's questions, but I know I had like a straight up attitude, and everything I said was the opposite of how I felt. Like, I wasn't telling him the truth. I was answering the questions weird. He was like, what do you see in this picture? And I'm like,
I don't know, kangaroo punch somebody in the face.
Like, I was just making up all kinds of weird stuff to say. But I looked like I believed it, every word of it, and I was straight up acting. But I didn't know what the consequences were for me doing that. I think I just wanted payback. Like, you adults suck. All of you guys suck. You don't know what you're doing. Disorganized. I'm sick and tired of grown-ups, you know? Clearly, I must have said the wrong things, because either he read that I was, like, faking it, or he was concerned that I actually had something wrong with me, because when my sister left, I didn't get to leave. I had to stay there. And I remember them like sending us to a room full of teenagers that was supposed to be school. And I'm like, how is this school when there's like all these different age groups of people in here and we're all learning the same thing from one person? This isn't school. Like, I could process this when I was 8 years old. Man, this is crazy. All of this stuff is happening within like a span of maybe a year of us moving to America. When I'm saying this stuff out loud, it just sounds like a story. Like, it sounds like something from a movie. Like, how can this happen to people in real life? But it did. It happened to us. My sister was my security blanket, which I didn't realize then. I have this fetish with faces, need to like be around faces that I find interesting. My way of collecting faces without collecting actual faces is to have dolls. To me, my sister at that time was like my only doll baby that was with me all the time. She was the only doll that I could keep near me, and I didn't have to worry about somebody taking her away, which I was already traumatized by our move to America, because I had left behind one of my favorite dolls and my dad forgot to pack her. And like, when he went back into the house, he asked me, what do you want me to grab out of your room? All I wanted was my doll. I just was like, just please bring me my doll. And he, of course he forgot, because he was rushing, and he didn't bring me my doll. And that doll was like everything, my whole world to me. Like, when I was around my dolls, I would feel like they were my little friends that I could confide to and tell them things, and they would keep my secret. To me, my substitute for that was my sister. In my Korean culture, younger siblings, they don't even call you by your name. Like, they have to call you big brother, big sister. There's this sense of authority that's established just in how we address each other. For the most part, my sister listens to me because she knew that if she didn't, she'd get in trouble with our parents and with all of the grown-ups in our lives, because Koreans take it very serious. Like, the hierarchy of, you know, authority in their household, you have to play your role in the family unit in order for everybody to function well. This is instilled in you when you are a child. And I was always the oldest of all of us. Like, I was the oldest sibling. I was the oldest cousin. So all of my younger cousins on my mom's side, they all call me big sister. That's how I saw myself, as their like leader, the leader of the group. I felt a lot of comfort in being around my sister, and like, it made me feel less alone. It made me feel less weird, because I feel like even though I wasn't like other kids, somehow my sister got me. Like, she got me. Like, I need her around, you know? So this was the first time that me and her were deliberately separated for like a prolonged time. And I didn't know how to cope with it. It was insane. Like, I felt like I was going crazy. So I just wanted to get back to my sister. Somehow, some way, I don't know, I convinced these people that I was fine. My mom was starting to deteriorate mentally even more because I was in this place. And she really believed that I had tried to like hurt myself. Or maybe even like stab the girl. Maybe they thought I was gonna hurt her with it. I don't know. While me and my sister were at school one day, I believe that my mother had a nervous breakdown. Like, she had some type of mental episode. No one really explained to us what happened. I have no details on the situation, and I wasn't there when it happened, so I'm just going off things I've heard my mother say. And she doesn't talk about it that much because she feels some kind of way about all of this happening to her. They hauled my mother off to a mental institution as well. I shouldn't say mental institution. I think it was just a hospital. It was like the psych ward of the hospital. But to me, it's the mental institution. So that's how I always describe it. Meanwhile, we're at school. We didn't know anything that was going on. When we got back to the shelter after school, there was a caseworker waiting there for us. And she was like, yeah, my name is so-and-so, I don't remember her name. She, you know who she looked like? She reminded me of the lady from that movie Beethoven, the mean lady who keeps trying to like catch the dog. Her whole demeanor, everything, like the way she was dressed, the way she did her hair, her face, everything, she looked just like her. She was like, yeah, I'm your caseworker and I'm about to take you guys to a foster home. You'll be meeting your new family. And we were like, what are you talking about? Like, where's my mom? And she's like, your mom's in the hospital and we don't know when she's gonna be out, but you guys can't stay here because you have no ties here. Like, there's nobody here that can be responsible for you. So you have to go and stay with foster families. I didn't even know what a foster family was. I thought Foster was the last name of the family that we were going to visit. Like, I was like, who are the Fosters? Like, I don't know anybody named Foster. They already had our things packed. She was loading them into the car, and all we had was our book bags that we had just gotten home from school with. And she hauled us out of there, and I was like, where the fuck are we going? So she ends up driving us to Somerville. Somerville is close enough to Cambridge that you can probably walk into Cambridge from Somerville because their borders are touching. So she ended up taking us to Somerville. This family comes outside to greet us. She's only taking out half of the bags, and then she's like, okay, so this is where you're gonna stay, to me. And I'm like, what about my sister? And they're like, oh, well, she's gonna go somewhere else. She's gonna be in a different house. What are you talking about? What? I'm like, this is my sister. You don't take my sister away from me. And thanks for the warning, bitch. Like, what the fuck? I was irate. Like, I was steaming hot, pissed off. There's nothing you can do. I was completely helpless. I don't know. I didn't know where my mom was. I don't know where they were taking my sister, why they were taking my sister. I was pissed. She was just cold. Like, she was very indifferent. So now I'm just devastated. Like, I'm like hugging my sister. I don't want to let her go. We're like in tears, like a death in the family has occurred. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't know how to react. She left. Turns out she ended up in Wilmington, Massachusetts with a completely different family. And the reason why we were separated is because, which happens a lot in foster care, sibling groups are really hard to place. And we weren't little kids. I mean, we were like 8 and 7 years old, so we were school-age children. They're even harder to place. Like, babies and infants and toddlers are the easiest to place. Soon as you have multiples and a higher age group, they're very, very difficult to place in foster homes because the families are... A lot of people who go into foster care, I know this because I myself was going to become a foster parent. A lot of people that do this, they are really just looking for babies to eventually adopt. And a lot of states have rules saying that you have to be a foster parent first before you can adopt. So they have no choice but to go through the foster care system and get their license. Even though they are looking for children to adopt, they'll continue fostering other kids because the state pays them. And even though the income is not supposed to be considered income, it's supposed to be like a stipend for you to spend the money on the kids. There's a lot of greedy people out there, and they will spend the bare minimum on the child and hoard lots and lots and lots of stuff that they keep from the other foster kids that come through with various belongings that they come to you with. And once they've built up enough of a collection to not have to go shopping for kids anymore, they will just not spend money on those children. So they'll just ration the food out to them so that they're eating just enough where they're getting probably the calories that they need, but they're not necessarily eating as much as they want to. Because I do remember when we were in foster care, a lot of the families had restrictions on how much food we could eat. I talk about this a lot, but like at the time I was like bone skinny, but I had a massive appetite. I was always hungry for some reason. And I ate like 3 times more than my sister, who was chubbier than I was. So I was constantly thinking about food. Like, I don't know what it was, but just food. Maybe it was my autism. It's like the taste of the food, the textures of the food. And then at that time, we're fresh from Korea. So we had a certain diet that we were used to having, which was Korean food 3 times a day. Except when we were at school, I guess. But like, we ate as much as we wanted to when we were around my mom, because she liked to cook. Being used to that and then suddenly being removed from that situation, that's scary. Even when we were living in the battered women's shelters, like, they had their own food that they would let you have that was rationed. But when we went to places where it was like self-serve, there wasn't like a cafeteria where everybody got food from, my mother always made sure that we had some kind of Korean food to eat. So it was very shocking to be in this environment where like we had no control over anything really. And then the worst part was that I was separated from my sister. The family that I was with In Somerville, the best foster family that I experienced, I like to this day, like I love them. Like the daughter that was my foster sister, she's my Facebook friend, and her parents treated me very well. Like they were kind-hearted. Oh man, I can't say enough good things about them because they never did anything to make me feel displaced. They never did anything to make me feel uncared for. They had just genuine concern for me. They threw me a birthday party when I was turning 9. And they knew I loved dolls because their daughter had dolls and we would play Barbies all the time. And they like bought me my first official American Barbie doll since leaving my dad. Like when we were still with my dad, I did have one Barbie that my aunt had bought for me to play with her daughter because she had tons of Barbies and we loved playing dolls together, and my aunt actually got me my first official Barbie. I had to leave her behind when we left. The problem was though that I was separated from my sister, so when I would like call her on the phone a few times, actually my foster families knew each other. Somehow they were able to like set things up so that we could talk to each other on the phone. Somewhere along the line, our caseworker switched. So the next person who became our social worker was this young lady. She was probably in her 20s at the time, named Becky Carnes. And but we call her Becky Carnes because in Massachusetts everyone has this accent. That's how they would pronounce her name. It took me forever before I realized there was an R in there. I was like, wait, what is her name? But we were calling her Becky Carnes, right? Anyway, she was awesome. Like Becky Carnes, she loved her job. She was there for the passion of what she was doing, and we felt the difference. She cared about us, and I think she was the one that set it up so that we could talk to each other on the phone from time to time. We could not talk to our mother. She was not allowed to know where we were, which really like pissed me off. And they were trying to set up visitations for my mom for us, but she had to come to some stupid facility that we had to go like downtown Boston to see my mom at like a social services building. And sometimes she, man, it's crazy because we didn't get a lot of time with her, but she told us later that she was so broke, she had no money. I think she herself was staying at like a shelter of some sort. She had got released from the hospital, but she didn't have anything of her own yet, so they wouldn't release my sister and me to her until she was on her feet. In the meantime, she was staying wherever she was staying at, and she had no money, so she said that she had to jump the turnstile at the train station because she could not afford a ticket, and she'd sneak onto the train to come downtown to see my sister and me because she could not allow herself to miss a visit with us. And she said she felt bad because she couldn't like bring us presents, or the most she could do sometimes was like spend the last of her money to go get a treat from like a Korean market so we would have some kind of Korean food to eat while we were visiting with her. And she never asked us where we were staying or anything like that. And it was hard for her because she had to really refrain from questioning us about our whereabouts because she knew that she wasn't supposed to know where we were and that she could get in a lot of trouble if she tried to like show up at our school or something. I think I was still going to the same school that I was in because, like I said, Cambridge and Somerville are really close to each other, so they were trying to keep my environment as much the same as they could. So a special bus would come to Cambridge to pick me up, or to Somerville to pick me up to so I could go to school in Cambridge. So my mother knew that I was still going to the same school, but she was really like trying hard to behave herself because she didn't want to lose us even further. The reason why I'm crying is because when I think about my relationship with my mom now, it's not where I want it to be, and I do blame my mother a lot for why our relationship is as bad as it is, because I feel like over the years she's changed a lot and become more and more like just in her own delusions, kind of like lost touch with her groundedness, I guess. So when she interacts with me and my sister, it's like really easy for us to get into arguments with her or just lose interest in the conversation because it feels like she's not really talking to us, she's just talking through us. And then the only times that she's talking to us is when she's scolding us about something. You know, I remember a time when my mother was really affectionate with us, and and she seemed like she cared about us a lot, and she would sacrifice anything for us. And she did. She didn't get any of the help that she needs mentally. So over time, she just mentally deteriorated. And like now, you know, when my mother hears people saying like, oh, she's crazy, or that there's something wrong with her in her mind, she gets really offended. She gets really mad. She'll blame the other people and say that they're just jealous of her, or they're like interpreting something the wrong way. She won't own up to any of it. She thinks that her behavior is really normal and the whole world is crazy, and like the way that she's processing things and behaving with people, that they should just accept it because she's right. But she'll hurt people's feelings and like be very condescending and bossy and so inconsiderate when she's like talking to people and make them feel really bad. For a long time I used to be upset with her because I thought she was doing it on purpose, but now that I've learned more about autism and different kind of mental disorders, I know that she's not doing it on purpose. So that helped me to repair some of my relationship with my mom. I can kind of get through a conversation with her without taking everything she says personal, but it still hurts because when I think about how she was back then, like I miss that mom. I miss how she was then, and I wish I could have that back. I probably never will. So I just have to kind of like get over it, I guess, and just accept that she is the way that she is. It's really hard to do that. If I had never had it, it would probably be easier. But because I remember that she was different, it's hard to accept that she is the way that she is. And it's really crazy because when we're around other people, my mother, she can kind of switch her behavior just enough so that she can get through her interactions with people. Like they'll question, they'll be like, is she really? Because her daughters are always talking about her like she's like this, but then when I was around her, she wasn't acting like that. So they miss it a lot of times. Like you have to be around her constantly to see this behavior that I'm talking about. Oh man, it got really bad over the years. But you know, now it just looks like my sister and I are holding grudges against my mom because we don't really trust her. But man, when you guys hear the stuff that we went through, I know you're like, you went through more stuff than this? Yes, we did. Like I thought it was never going to end. I'm telling you, I thought it was never going to end. And this is why it's so important for me to make these videos and talk about the stuff on this channel, because it's like a chain reaction. Like so many things that were affected by one thing, it just catapulted the rest of the nonsense. It's still not over. Like I don't have the same drama that I had when I was a kid, but the aftermath, the emotional aftermath of the things that affected me, like it's like I'm carrying it on as an adult and just trying to deal with the aftermath and break myself out of certain habits that really like destroy relationships. And the only way I can think of to do that at this stage is to talk about it. If I don't get it out, if I don't like express myself, if I don't analyze this stuff, if I don't break the stuff down and try to understand it, because that's my whole thing. Like I need to know why things are happening. If I can't answer the question of why, it's like it's always nagging me until I figure it out. And I feel like looking back at these videos, hearing myself say things out loud that also kind of trigger other memories, even though it's painful, it's helpful because I'm learning from it and it's helping me to see the behavior myself as soon as I do it, instead of after I already did it and then I'm looking back. I want to see this stuff while I'm doing it so I don't end up like my mom. I'm just reacting to things and then I don't know how my behavior is affecting people. So this is how we ended up in foster care. And while we were in foster care, oh boy, so many things happened. I will get into the whole foster care adventure in another video. And in my situation, the story didn't end because that's like the beginning of the next chapter. So maybe that's why I don't know how to end the videos, because technically it's not really an ending. It's just to be continued. I ended up going to 3 different houses during that year, and my sister was in 2. Yeah, so I'll tell you guys what happened during that year. The comment section, man, drop it in the comments. If nobody responds, who cares? Just get it off your chest. It's anonymous. We don't know who you is in real life, you know? So it's a great way to vent without feeling like people are all up in your business. And also, if you're gearing your damaging comments towards me, I don't give a shit. But like, if you do that to someone else who's on my channel commenting, I will remove your comment. So don't do that. Go ahead, like the video if you like it, dislike the video if you dislike it. It really doesn't matter. I hope you guys know that, like, when you're on YouTube and you dislike stuff on people's channels, you're actually doing the same thing as liking it. So if you really dislike it, it's better to just not hit any button, because YouTube's algorithm doesn't understand that it's positive or negative. Those buttons have the exact same value behind the scenes. So when YouTube sees that you have like 1 million dislikes, like, YouTube system thinks, oh, this is a popular channel because so many people are interacting with this. I just want to see the likes so that I'll have an idea of like how many people were affected by the video that they watched and maybe would want more content on that topic. Like I said, if you're doing it because you think that YouTube is gonna somehow rank the video higher or lower, don't hit any buttons at all, because that's going to make YouTube say, one more person wants to engage with this channel, so let's rank them up. That's just how it works. So yeah, sorry to burst some of your bubbles. Yeah, that's it for me. So I'm gonna go. See you in the next video. My name's Gypsy, and you can follow me on Instagram. You can chat with me here if you'd like, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out, dookies.